latest government briefing from Downing Street at 5 o'clock this afternoon. We'll also go over some of the main headlines to come out of the government briefing at 5 with our political reporter Kevin Larkin. We'll speak to him later on that hour as well. Also, John Ison has been speaking to a charity shop which is preparing to reopen and receive loads of donations when lockdown eases. And right now, we spoke about this on yesterday's show, watching the events and the protests taking place following the death of George Floyd. Many people have expressed anger and sadness yesterday as we had Blackout Tuesday, where people went silent on social media. Just looking down my social media feed yesterday, and at one point, every single post was everyone was just posting a black screen. People went silent on social media as well yesterday. And I guess to reflect on what's happening and stand in solidarity with Black Lives Matter, the movement there. Now, buildings across England, including here in Leeds, were bathed in purple light in memory of George Floyd to symbolise the pain and outrage that has sparked large-scale riots in America. Now, joining me now is Yunus Lunat. He's an equality campaigner and employment lawyer based at Ison Harrison in Leeds. Good afternoon, Yunus. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. So, watching the news and seeing the protests and events unfold, how's that making you feel?
It's initially, we've been here before, but I really do hope with all the movement that's being galvanized now for race and race equality and the campaign for racial equality, that this is like a Me Too moment, that it does take that initiative and we do see some lasting change in society.
Yeah, I've noticed quite a few people talk about that, and I think because social media is such a powerful tool, isn't it, and it's spread so widely across the planet, it starts to really gather some momentum.
Yes, but one thing that does concern me and bother me is and I speak from a sports perspective. I do a lot of work in football, equality and racism. And what I say a lot in football is the argument, the discussion in football is limited to as long as blacks and Asians can attend football, watch the game, not be subjected to abuse, we pat ourselves on the back, or the authorities will pat themselves on the back. In the same way, as long as black people can exist in society, but we have to discuss about opportunities, progression, leadership roles, because the dearth of the total absence of role models, visible role models, is what's affecting a lot of this. Who are making the decisions? How are policies formulated? Why are we not represented? Why is our voices not heard?
For you, what was it like growing up? You've experienced this every day of your life, haven't you?
Oh, well, I can pick a recent example I can give. Let's say in my work as an employment lawyer, I deal with discrimination cases on a daily basis. And recently, we've issued a claim which was awful discrimination subjected in the workplace. And my colleague had prepared part of the statement. My colleague is white. And there was a discussion in the open plan office about how shocking and how disgraceful the behavior that this person has been subjected to. And I actually said, do you know what? I've read all of this. I've met the person. And this is what it was like for us to grow up in the 80s. It's typical school in the 80s. And what's worse, a lot of that was from teachers, not just fellow pupils. And the jaws just dropped. They couldn't believe that this is how people grew up in the 80s and what we were subjected to.
I was reading about sometimes when people book holidays, and you have to think about, am I going to be accepted in that country or not?
It's the lived experience. This is what white people cannot seem to appreciate and can never understand racism, because this is how we discussed this in the office. The simple things like, where do you go socially? Where do you go on holiday? You have to stop, pause and think, how will I be welcomed? Will I experience anything in this country or this place where we're looking to go, this restaurant or wherever we're going socially? And these are everyday decisions and pauses and reflections that minority people have to make that white people can never ever understand and appreciate.
George Floyd's death, and all of us that have seen it, absolutely shocking. I think, in fact, when I first saw it, it was really early in the morning. I picked my phone up and I was looking down Instagram, and I think it was Madonna that actually shared it. And to watch that shocking, awful, barbaric video, that has resonated across the world, hasn't it?
But it's not the first time that has happened.
No, it hasn't.
What
No.
society needs to do, and as Madonna went on social media, it's got to be led by the white people. Have got to acknowledge and self-reflection. I mean, when you talk about self-reflection, I've listened to radio all day yesterday, all day today, and I struggle to name other than one presenter of colour on BBC. Now, we're in 2020, and it was yesterday lunchtime before I heard an ethnic presenter on national BBC. Now, it is shocking that we are having this discussion in 2020, and this is what I'm saying, that structures in society have to change. There needs to be self-reflection. And for example, when there is a terrorist incident, the media will line up and go into these Muslim communities and expect Muslims to come out and give statements and apologize even. Now, let's turn the tables. Why are the media not going to these white communities? Why are white people not coming out in droves and acknowledging this is not acceptable? We need to change. We need to lead the change. Why is that debate not happening on a wider scale? Yet what the media is doing is expecting black people and ethnic minority people to come and tell us what needs to change for you.
I'm a 40-year-old white woman, and I think I've done right. This is not about me, of course, but I think I've always tried to do the best. I worked with two people on a radio show for 15 years who were black, and to hear about their experiences every single day. And if we talked about our childhood experiences and what they experienced throughout their lives every single day, I think one thing I learned through all of that is listen more and talk less.
Of course, look, most people are right-minded, do the right thing. But in terms of you explaining your connections, your contacts, most people will have contact with different races, different ethnicities in the workplace. Mm. Now, as I practice as an employment lawyer, and I experience and I deal with discrimination in the workplace on a daily basis. And what I say is, in today's society, the biggest form of discrimination today is not somebody calling me the P word or calling somebody the N word. The biggest form of discrimination is the lack of opportunities for ethnic minorities, the lack of opportunities for progressions into leadership roles. And if you're not mixing with different people, or you're only mixing with different people in your workplace, then that's not a great start. You know, what are you doing socially? Where are we meeting people of different races outside the workplace? Where are these discussions having taken place?
And do the government and people in power need to do more?
Well, it's not necessarily just the government. It's industry, it's businesses. You know, in society, we are comfortable having a discussion, having debates about gender progression. We have made huge, if you look statistically, there have been great improvements in gender representation in industry, in the media. There are targets, yet for some reason, there are no targets for race equality, for ethnic diversity. Boardroom targets. There have been targets for gender targets for the last 10 years. And they have been achieved. Yet society, industry will not have the same discussion and same debate about race. You know, there's a reluctance to actually have racial targets.
Do you think that everything that is happening now, this will change? There is a line being drawn in the sand.
My honest view, hand on heart, is we talk about what the pandemic has done.
Yes.
And society needs to change. We need to change how we live our lives. We need to change this and that. My concern is 6 months down the line, everybody goes back into their comfort zones and we carry on as we are. There has to be change. This must not, the campaign that has started must not stop. And there is widespread support from the wider community as well, which is good to see. But it's got to reach the industry top levels where executives' decisions are made. That's where the change has to come from.
And people need to educate themselves as well, don't they? I mean, if you've got Netflix, go on to Netflix and watch 13th, which is an incredibly powerful documentary. An hour and a half out of your life and it'll change. I watched that recently and it blew my mind.
We talked about education. Sorry, I'll let you.
No, go ahead. Talk about education.
No,
but this needs to start in schools.
Discussed many years in schools.
Yeah.
My daughter did history A level, and I actually meant it seriously, but in tongue in cheek, I said to the tutors, I looked at the syllabus, and it's largely indoctrination. What they teach on the history A level subject, we need to teach about our own history, the history of Britain, how Britain was formulated, what Britain did, when they went to India, went to the subcontinent. Why is that not taught? How Britain formed itself. That needs to be in the syllabus. And not just our imperialism, how we ruled the world, how we fought the wars. To an extent, a lot of history that's taught, I say, it's indoctrination of the youth.
Yunus Lunat is a equity campaigner and employment lawyer based at Ison in Leeds. Incredibly powerful to speak to you this afternoon, Yunus. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Have a great day.
I didn't ask for a free